In the first episode of Task, we were introduced to two people on opposite sides of the crime spectrum, Tom and Robbie. Tom was an FBI agent who was assigned to head a task force to bring in a trio of robbers who were going around hitting drug dens that belonged to a biker gang known as Dark Hearts. In his team were Aleah, Elizabeth, and Anthony, and they were given a dilapidated house to use as their headquarters. Since they had no idea how the trio functioned, they were unable to prevent a shootout and kidnapping. Speaking of the trio, it comprised Robbie, Cliff, and Peaches. Robbie and Cliff were garbage collectors by day, while Peaches worked as a handyman, and at night they became robbers. They got all their intel from someone named MZ. And although the hits looked random, as mentioned before, it was clear that they were targeting one particular gang. Things went wrong during their latest robbery. The inhabitants of the drug den bit the dust, as did Peaches. And in this process, Robbie and Cliff orphaned a kid named Sam. Since Sam had seen their faces, they could either kill him or let him live and risk getting identified by him. Robbie went for the second option. What were the consequences of that action? Let's talk about the second episode and find out. Spoiler alert. Robbie lies to Sam. Jason Wilkes, a senior member of Dark Hearts, wakes up to the news that Warren, Derek, and Joan have been killed, and Sam is missing. He knows that it's the same crew that has been targeting his gang all this while, but he clearly can't prove it. Jason knows about Peach's death, but the gang hasn't been able to identify him yet. As long as they can't identify him, Robbie and Cliff and their loved ones can enjoy some level of immunity. Jason assumes that the attackers had prior knowledge of the shipment that was in that house. That can mean only one thing. MZ is someone who works in Dark Hearts and is getting back at the gang by secretly ordering hits on them. So, Jason calls for a team meeting to talk to everyone about this ongoing situation. Speaking of Sam, he is in Robbie's room, sleeping peacefully. Robbie hasn't broken the news to Maeve, Wyatt, and Harper because he has been doing a swell job of being the father figure of the family, and adding another kid to the mix is going to complicate the situation even further. So, he keeps Sam in his room until everyone has left. Once everyone is gone, Robbie and Cliff try to chalk out their next steps. First of all, their contact, MZ, isn't responding to any of Robbie's texts. Secondly, there's no cash in the bag that they stole from that house. It is full of uncut fentanyl. And thirdly, Sam is hungry. The task force analyzes the Dark Hearts. Even though the authorities don't find anything substantial at the crime scene, Tom tells his task force to collect every bit of data that they can and convene at their HQ with all the details. Meanwhile, Tom and Anthony head over to Peach's girlfriend, Kaylee's house, to talk to her and her father, David, about what they know about the deceased individual. Shockingly enough, Kaylee reveals that she met Peaches online, and she moved all the way from Ohio to Pennsylvania without learning a thing about Peaches or who he fraternizes with. That's why when Tom and Anthony start talking about the circumstances in which Peaches was found, Kaylee has a full-on meltdown, which compels David to ask the officers to leave. On their way back to their headquarters, Anthony learns how Tom went from being a priest to an FBI agent and pulls his leg about religion, crime, and more. It's a pretty hilarious scene. That's followed by yet another hilarious scene at the headquarters, where Tom asks Anthony to round up everyone for a status meeting, and Anthony walks in on Elizabeth, lost in her own world with her headphones on, and gives her the shock of her life. Maeve tries to get rid of Sam. Jason is getting an earful from Perry for putting their whole establishment on the FBI's radar. In order to buy some time and fix this whole mess, Jason highlights the fact that they have a way to get back at the trio that killed their people. As mentioned before, since Robbie and Cliff have fentanyl, they'll need to sell it. They'll go to Freddy for that. Jason and Perry will have to negotiate with Freddy to prove that that fentanyl belongs to the Dark Hearts if they want to get paid. However, once that's all done, they can nab Robbie and Cliff and make them pay for their trespasses. Here's the thing. I don't think that Robbie going after the Dark Hearts is as random as it seems. You see, there are two moments where the editing exposes this connection. Firstly, when Robbie talks about working with Sam's father, and secondly, when Joe talks about Jason killing a guy named Billy. The FBI almost gets Sam. Ahead of the family meeting between Emily, Tom, Sarah, and Matt, Emily is seen going to her therapist to talk about how she feels about Ethan's hearing, and that she is of two minds when it comes to making a statement that may or may not sway the judge's verdict in his favor. On one hand, Emily feels that prison won't improve Ethan's mental health, and on the other, she's afraid that if he is freed, he'll do something even more drastic than the act that got him into jail in the first place. On that note, we're taken to the family meeting, which goes disastrously because Sarah turns out to be racist. Yes, she is well within her rights to be upset about the fact that her foster sister is thinking about writing a statement that'll set their foster brother free. However, the way Sarah says, "Ethan killed my mother," and Emily is helping her brother, makes it clear that she doesn't see Ethan and Emily as her siblings. This causes Emily to leave the house and prompts Tom to give Sarah an earful about how sorrow is no excuse for bigotry. Tom says that he misses his wife, and he is sad about the fact that Ethan's mental disorder led to such a fatal mishap. He accepts that he feels lost when it comes to figuring out if he should forgive Ethan. That said, what he tries not to do is use his state of confusion to make things difficult for Emily, who is processing things in her own way. That's what empathy looks like. Usually people like Sarah, who is undeniably hurting, will claim that what they are doing is the truest expression of grief. However, if you're causing pain to everyone around you because you're grieving, that's not grief. That's hatred, which you're expressing under the garb of grief.